And I'm Jeffrey.
And together, we're the Cross Eyed Guys. So today, we're going to talk about church hurt, and we're going to kind of get into a little bit of Jeffrey's story. And over the next couple of episodes, we'll kind of dig into this topic a little bit. So, like this week will be Jeffrey. Next week, we'll talk about my story. And then the third week of this, we're going to talk about, just kind of really what church hurt is, and we'll call it out for what it really is. So, anyway, before we get started today, I guess I should give you all the title. Today, we're deciding to call this "Looking Beyond the Veil," and it's just a little bit about what Jeffrey has gone through and his experience with church hurt. And so, before we get into the story, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with the church?
Yeah. So we started the church in question. We started going early 2010s, um, and initially, it just immediately felt like home when we walked in. We had a little bit of history with the pastor there, just through growing up together on my wife's side of it, and a fun story I always like to tell when coming to this church is uh, actually really kind of starts when I was in high school. That the pastor I had growing up, Pastor Dan, he left the church we were at, way back in Lafayette, and went to the district council. He also co-officiated our wedding, and he actually approached the lead pastor at the church we left to start a church. So, all those years later, it came full circle of growing up with Pastor Dan as my pastor, and then going to a church that he helped create. And I always thought that was a neat little connection, uh, coming full circle. And we got kind of into it um, pretty much on the ground floor. We weren't there when they originally started, but we were there when they were in their old building, just a little small church building, single auditorium, a few classrooms, and that was about it. And we immediately got involved. Originally, it was something my wife immediately got into children's church, and I went into children's church. Something that she took to pretty naturally, but something I had never done before. But I loved it, so we got into that. And then, like just throughout the years, we got the privilege of seeing the church grow from that small building to um, doing work on that building to help create more space, to adding modular classrooms outside, extending the parking lot using gravel, taking up real estate, and that used to be grass, and it's just putting gravel for parking. And we were just really sold out for the cause for a really long time. Before all this happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. So it sounds like you guys are really happy at this church. When did everything really just kind of start to go south or maybe fall apart? What did that look like?
Well, it was interesting. Once things started happening, they kind of happened pretty quick, kind of about over the course of a year, maybe a little bit less. Um, it really started when, just completely separate from each other, my wife and I kind of like were starting to each think that, well, we're not quite just feeling it here anymore, and just kind of afraid of saying to the other, hey, I don't know if we're supposed to be here anymore, just not knowing what the other
Yeah,
thought. I didn't want to be like, I think we should leave. Where my wife was like, no, I still love it here.
yeah.
Um, so neither of us said anything to each other, and then something came around. It's you ever heard of a series called At the Movies?
Oh yeah,
It's a series that lots of churches do, and they started that way back when we were in the original building. And I remember when they announced it, my wife and I both were just absolutely loved the idea. Completely sold out for it. Over the years, we got to cosplay at church. We are involved in like doing the announcements from the platform, dressed as Star Wars characters. I dressed up as Spider-Man one year. That was I loved that costume. I had to get in shape for that one.
Yeah, that's funny.
And just happened that the at the movie series that year, we just thought it just wasn't very good.
Yeah,
It's a scripted series, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you could tell it was a scripted series. Um, it just did not feel organic at all. Our pastor just wasn't that good of an actor. That's nothing against him or his ability to preach. Um, it was a good thing he's a pastor and not an actor.
yeah, yeah.
And seriously, that's not a dig against him at all. Um, and so that's when we started talking to each other about don't know if we're quite feeling it. We felt that our interest in what kind of preaching we were looking for was changing. We felt that the preaching at the churches started getting topical,
Yeah,
which for a certain time was fine. Uh, but we were thinking we wanted to get more into the word, and we wanted to be at a church that preached the word from the pulpit, and not
right.
just relegated that to like small groups.
Yeah,
Which again, at this point, we're not hurt or anything like that. We're just thinking this might not be where we're called to be anymore.
yeah,
The first sort of you know irritating thing, or something that kind of lit the fuse, I guess you could say, was I I like to everyone likes to put their opinion on the social medias, and
yeah,
when I do it, I try to word it really well, be very clear in my opinion. I do these things that I call commentaries of the day, like political commentary of the day, random commentary of the day, and of course then I'll do Christian commentary of the day. And I just happened to do one of these, and I posted an opinion on something uh, that, well, I'll just say it was on the sinner's prayer, right?
yeah, yeah.
Whether or not the sinner's prayer is biblical, effective, that kind of thing. And a few days later, after I posted that, I got a phone call from a pastor at the church, and just talking some concerns about having posted it. And I assured them that I had no beef with the church. If I had some sort of grievance, I would never air that grievance on social media. That wouldn't be
Yeah.
appropriate. Um, but it was just really annoying because wasn't like an outright like you know discipline thing like that, but they definitely would have rather I not post something like that.
Right.
And so I thought that was inappropriate and unnecessary. And we even talked to friends of ours and family that if they thought we were wrong, they would have told us. Even if like they thought the initial post was wrong, um, they would sent me a text or called me and say, hey, you might want to rethink this or something. And
Right.
um, there's a part of me that sometimes wish I had like contacted the lead pastor there, just sort of an official like, hey, I don't think this was appropriate sort of thing. Um, that night, then I purged my Facebook, my private Facebook, of anyone from the church that we didn't actually have like a friendship with.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair.
Because at first I assumed that someone had ratted me out basically, but we found out later that that may have not been the case. Foreshadow. Um, and so we have that. We're thinking it's topical preaching. Um, in the meantime, something that I started looking into in my own personal devotion and study time was tithing.
Yeah.
And for uh, because of a certain YouTube personality I really like to, or I really like, I started questioning. It's like, all right, why don't I take these objections to tithing that I'd always written off in the past and actually look to see if there was any validity to them. And so that's kind of going on in the background.
Yeah.
And so come around to um, we get my wife and I get invited to be a part of this new church ministry called Bible 101.
Hmm.
And so we think, okay, we're getting more, we're getting further into um, the scripture. It may not be from the pulpit, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Um, it's like, all right, this may extend our tenure here at the church. Uh, and then Christmas Eve service came, and so we went there. I was a part of it. I actually dressed up as the Grinch there,
Nice.
and at that time and currently the church is very large, so they do multiple services, and so we were there for multiple services, and we just really didn't like what they did with it. I wasn't, I committed to, participating or whatnot,
Yeah.
so I wasn't going to like just walk out on it. That wouldn't have been appropriate. But it was just very, it felt very entertainment based
Right.
rather than
Right.
um, reverence. And they did, at the end of it, they did do the candlelight service part of it, but everything leading up to that point, we just felt was very seeker sensitive, which is something also that I had just recently learned was a thing. And when I looked it up, uh, if you don't know what the seeker sensitive movement is, it's something that a lot of churches doing, especially large churches. And I looked. This will be a topic we'll talk about on another episode, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail
Yeah.
on it. But I looked up the definition of a seeker sensitive church, and just the church we were at, it just like ticked off all the points. Not all of them, but for the most part, it's like yeah, And then what we were seeing of like that, at the movies and in the Christmas Eve service, it's like yeah, this church is definitely becoming seeker sensitive, and while that's good for some people. Um, that just it just wasn't driving for us.
Right.
And so all these things are going on that we're being pulled one direction, we're being pulled another direction, and then some of it came to a head in that we found out there is some things that the church, some decisions the church had made, and the way they're presented, that the church had essentially lied to the congregation about some things. I can't go into detail here, but it was not just email communications or anything like that. It was from the pulpit. The pastor had said that certain people were leaving the church, and but it was all like for good reasons, and it just turns out it was all a lie.
Yeah.
And so that really kind of rocked our world. Um, just kind of didn't know what to do with that. We still hadn't committed to leaving the church yet because we still had this Bible 101 thing. So we're still hanging in there. And with this Bible 101 class that we had really had a lot of influence on, we had all these different meetings, and then we missed the final meeting before the final launch of it. And so we set up a meeting with the pastor who was spearheading that
Yeah.
to meet with him and another pastor after church on Sunday morning. And then we went to actually go to the meeting, and we walked in, and I knew immediately something was up when it was just the one pastor. We
Yeah.
walked in, the other pastor wasn't there. I was like, all right, something's up. We're not here to talk about this Bible 101 thing. And I was right. First, they brought up the Facebook post again, which was just annoying. Um, it kind of was like, all right, what had they expected me to do that I hadn't done?
Right.
Because they wouldn't be bringing it up again if it was no longer an issue. Uh, I figure it was just they expected me to take it down and I didn't.
Yeah. So that's like some months later, right?
Yes. This is several months later,
Okay.
uh, and but the thing that really was really the kicker was he wanted to talk to us about our tithing. I talked to a few people about what our thoughts were on tithing and how they may be changing or whatnot, but we hadn't spoken to anyone attached to the church,
Right.
and yet somehow they knew we were no longer tithing. And I asked how, and it turns out that they were looking, not this not this pastor specifically, but another pastor in the church looked into what our giving was,
Right.
and it's one of those things where we had definitely had I think the term is grace under fire,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I know the pastor even indicated that he could tell what our reaction was through my body language, and I know that that's definitely a thing, and I definitely could tell that I kind of tensed up because we just felt that that was just completely inappropriate that they're looking into people's giving.
Yeah.
You know, especially when during Sunday morning sermons when the congregation is told by the pastor, well, I'm not looking into your giving, and it's like, well, maybe he's not, but somebody is.
Somebody is. Somebody's looking at what you're giving and what you're not giving.
Yeah, absolutely, and we just felt like that's not appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we give, what we don't give, is between us and God.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And on this topic, I can't wait to talk about tithing.
Oh yeah. We're gonna get there.
Yeah, we're going to get there, and it's going to be a great show. But we find this out, right? Um, I kind of lost my thought there, but so we find this out about tithing, and it's like, all right, fine. It's kind of like, okay, we bring it up, we can talk about it, and go our separate ways on that
Yeah.
topic, right? But that wasn't the case at all. So since we differed with the church on an issue that the pastor admitted was not even a salvation issue.
Yeah. Non-essential.
No, absolutely a non-essential. But because we differed with the church, we were no longer going to be allowed to be a part of the Bible 101 class.
Yeah.
The class that we actually helped create. And that was sort of the culmination of everything between the topical preaching, the seeker sensitiveness of it all, the finding out that the church had been lying to us. That's
Yeah.
one of the biggest parts. But then it really hit home this whole bringing up the Facebook post again,
Yeah.
and then not allowing us to serve on a ministry because we disagreed on the church on something. And and what's weird is we both served in kids church at the time, and there was no discussion on no longer letting us serve on that.
Yeah.
So talking to the kids is fine. Talking to the adults, uh, that that's a bridge too far. And it seemed like that it was a Bible 101 class, so we were going to start with Genesis.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like tithing would have even come up.
Yeah.
Like it was probably more likely to come up in a kids class than it would in this adult Bible 101 class. But you know, it's just all this, and knowing that they're looking into our giving. So it just feels like they're just going way too much into our personal life.
Yeah.
And so we leave church that Sunday, and we get home, and we just sit down, and it was as simple as that. That we were done.
Yeah.
That was our last Sunday at the church.
Yeah.
Um, so I formulate an email to let the pastor know. We emailed the same pastor who we met with, because we wanted to be cordial about it. We're not looking to burn bridges or make some sort of scene out of it. Um, and so I sent an email, had people read over the email, make sure it sounded good right now.
Yeah.
We talked about how we felt that the pastor who we spoke to, it shouldn't have been put on him to talk to us about tithing if he wasn't the one that was looking into our
Right.
giving. It should have been the pastor who was doing that.
Yeah.
And just because of other things, we decided to leave the church. And what we got an email back, and in that email, they took they didn't take any like responsibility for anything.
Yeah.
No, like of course they said the normal things. We're sorry to see you go. We valued your time, yada yada yada, but
Yeah.
nothing like we're sorry for our part, whatever we may have done, anything like that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I know you're being very gracious in this episode today, uh, but at the same time, you know, it really does stink, man, when you're a part of a church and you're giving your all and you're involved in all of the things you're teaching, you're involved in the classes, you've done their growth track, whatever the things might be. You've walked through all of that, and then you start to have differences. You start to have maybe just some issues with what's going on,
Mm.
or they have issues with you as an individual with what's going on. But then there's no real reconciliation to the situation. um, do you think or feel like maybe if they would have apologized, if they would have admitted their flaws in the situation, do you think it may have gone a little different for you?
Um, Definitely. Yeah, one of the things, I don't know if we would have stayed, but it definitely could have been more amicable, and even
Yeah.
possibly stayed if they had like kind of thought over what their part in it was, and at the least had an apology.
Yeah.
Um, this may be pride on my part, but I kind of thought that I would get a phone call from the lead pastor there that week, because we had yeah we'd been in his home and hung out together in different scenarios and whatnot, and that phone call never came.
Yeah.
Uh, so that kind of hurt, but again, that may be pride on my end. There's a lot of people in the church, and it's not just that there was no apology there. We found out stuff after leaving
Yeah.
that bothered us too. It was kind of one of those things that just kind of confirmed our decision to
Yeah.
leave. And one of those things, so circle back to the social media thing.
Yeah.
I assumed that someone read my post and routed me out to the church, or something like that. But my wife goes on to the church website that keeps track of you put in all your contact information, and
Yeah.
when the church does things that you have to sign up for, you sign up through this website. So the leaders of the different ministries can get on there and contact you easily, so on and so forth. She goes on to delete her information on there. This is before I've sent the email, and she notices a tab that says social media, and she had never noticed that before. She clicks on it, and every one of her social media handles is listed there.
Oh.
Yeah, and she did not give them any of them.
Yeah.
So it kind of led us to believe that they may have some sort of program that can uh, monitor social media. Some sort of AI something something that could like possibly ping keywords or something,
Right.
and bring it to the attention of whoever's over that. Um, So that was kind of shocking that that was there, that somehow it had gotten that we didn't put there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was someone, I don't know how. I won't go into I don't want to make any assumptions. Um, when I went to look, I had already sent the email, and they didn't waste any time shutting down our accounts on there, and my account was already shut down, so I couldn't see if mine were on there or not. I'm kind of assuming they probably were, but I can
Right.
neither confirm nor deny it. Um, Another thing that happened is we found out that some things weren't unique to the church. Now, like does everything a church does everything a church does have to be unique to
Yeah.
that church? No, I don't think it has to be, but it's all in the way it's presented.
Right.
I
Right.
I found out things like growth track and next steps. Growth track was the way you became a member of the church. You went through the step by step process. Next steps that was after you went through, and what's your next step? Usually serving in some sort of capacity, and then that team of volunteers is called the dream team. All of those, I found out were not unique to the church, which was
Yeah.
kind of neither here nor there. But the church's motto, which is, I want to read it, so I want to make sure I get it right. Know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and make a difference. I found out that that was not unique to the church.
Yeah.
Lots of churches use that very same word for word motto, and that one actually hurt a little bit. And it's not so much that it wasn't unique; it's that it was all presented as unique.
Yeah.
There was no indication that they had gotten it from anywhere else.
Right. So they kind of took the information and then just presented it as if it were their own information.
Right, correct. And that was just frustrating. That's why this episode is called "Looking Behind the Veil,"
Yeah.
is because that both before and after the split, we're getting to see behind the veil, the veneer, if you will, um, and seeing things that we just didn't like what the church was doing. And um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just I wish it hadn't gone the way it had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it can be devastating when you figure out that the church that you're a part of, that you've been around for many years, um, isn't actually doing their own thing. You come up with these ideas, you go into these meetings, you're like, hey, let's do this, and then they, collaboratively through the leadership of the church go, okay, well, this is how we're going to do it, and then you think that your ideas have a little bit of weight in what's going on, but in reality, what's actually happened is they've just gone back to the lack of better terms, curriculum or programming for what they had already bought into.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that can definitely be a little bit deceiving when you're just the individual working or serving at the church. Um, but on the other side of that, now that you're a couple of years removed from the situation, you're down the road a little ways here. Um, is there anything that you would like to say, or if you had an opportunity, would you say anything to the pastors or the staff of the church?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, uh, leading up to this, a week ago, as of the time recording this, I did get to see a few of the pastors, um, and it was a organized event. I won't go into the details of what that was, but we saw four of the pastors. We were actually at the church, and it was for the most part really nice to see them. And like the lead pastor, I gave him a hug. And you ever been in that awkward position where one of you goes in for the handshake and the other goes in for the hug,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and then it's just awkward all around.
yeah,
No, we both went in for the hug, and it was a real hug. There's a few seconds of embrace or whatever, and same with the youth pastor was there. And I started walking away, and he grabbed my arm, like intentionally grabbed my arm to talk to me, and we also shared a hug. That was a real hug, and um, they both mentioned that they had thought about me recently for different reasons, and
yeah,
it was genuinely really nice to see them again. And that's why going into this episode, I decided to handle it with more sensitivity than I had originally planned,
yeah,
because I don't want to alienate myself from those relationships. It was good to see them, and it'd be good to see them again, whether that's at a third party event, or even going to get coffee with them or something.
right,
Um, one, I would love to have a conversation with them, not in an effort to try to change their mind or them to change my mind, but what the study that I have done on tithing, I'd love to pick their brain
yeah,
on what I've come up with, and uh, why I think it. You know, but yeah, that's why I came into this. the idea was never to bash anyone.
Right.
Going into wanting to possibly leaving the church, we decided early on that we're not going to take anyone with us,
Yeah.
and so it ended as amicably for the situation that was. It ended as amicably as it could have.
Right. Right.
Kind of like it ended as good and as bad as it could have.
Yeah. Makes sense. And you know, obviously in these next several episodes, our goal is not at all to bash anybody or any church.
Absolutely.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's a matter of differences in opinion or differences. There's just differences, right? And so, you know, if our goal were to, get on here and bash people, then that would suggest that we were approaching the situation from a place of hurt rather than a place of healing. Um, and I think that being merciful and being gracious and being, just in a, I guess, handling it in a Christian manner is where you don't give all the details. You don't share all the things, but maybe you do share some of the emotional, uh, components or aspects. And as we get into the next story, we get into my story talking about it in the next episode. We're going to kind of get into, I think we're going to call that one when it all falls apart. So we'll get a little deeper into some of the emotional side of things, um, because sometimes leaving a church for looks one way for an individual who's serving, but then sometimes it looks an entirely different way from someone who was on staff. And
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't discredit or discount one or the other's experience or how it affected their life. It just looks a little different. And so, in our next episode, we'll talk a little bit about my story, and I'm feeling pretty excited about it. I too.
I'm feeling excited about this whole process.
Oh yeah, yeah, me
Just
too.
from this episode to the next episode to the next topic, it's going to
Yeah,
be a good time.
yeah, it's gonna be great. And I too have gotten to a place where I'm like, you know what, I'm likely not going to share the story the way that the pain feels.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get the pain across, but I don't want to, discredit somebody or, talk bad about a church or bad about a denomination or bad about any individual.
Well, neither of us would question the sincerity of the people involved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, not at all. Sometimes good pastors they just get to a place, man, where it's like they're doing the wrong thing, but they have the right heart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that in my last experience, I don't think for one second, I cannot believe for one second that that pastor is ill intentioned. I don't think that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the weight of church growth, the weight of just walking the model, walking the mold, and doing the things that are expected of him. I think that that took a toll on him, and that's where the impersonal, just kind of conversations came into play, where it was more of a function of I'm your boss. You know, I don't think one for one second that he was ill intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't feel that way. But so yeah. Uh, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the next one.
So am I. I
Yeah,
hope you guys are too.
yeah. The next two, they're going to be pretty good. I love Jeffrey's story. I'm so thankful to you that you came to a place where you're like, you know what, I want to be gracious. That shows a lot of maturity and a lot of healing in your life, and the Lord, you know, I think He'll honor that. So, yep. But anyway, hey y'all, I'm John.
I'm Jeffrey.
Stay cross-eyed. So what happened yesterday at church, man? Weren't you guys at the church yesterday, or
Yesterday at the church? No.
no? Well, I got that all mixed
Kimber
up. Then.
Kimber got in trouble
Oh,
though.
yeah. How'd that go? What happened?
Well, so she is for some reason started digging a hole right at the fence.
Yeah,
And so she came in and just her front paws are just caked in mud, and she was getting her face into it too, so it's all over her face.
yeah.
We were not happy.